Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Varsity Voices. I'm Joe Frevaletti and joined, as always, by my brother, Dan. And this is our Week 2 Prognosticus episode, where we break down this weekend's Chicago Catholic League football slate and put our names on the line with our predictions. It's a massive week across the league. We've got Mount Carmel taking on St. Joseph Regional out of New Jersey, and that one is on ESPN Friday night. Nazareth hosts York, Montini heads out to Sandburg, and Glenbard West and St. Rita square off Saturday afternoon. Joliet Catholic hosting Sacred Heart Griffin on Saturday night, and Brother Rice, St. Francis, Joliet Catholic, St. Lawrence, all with losses in Week 1, looking to get back on track. So we'll run through the CCL card from top to bottom, talk about who's coming off big performances, who's looking to bounce back, and of course, lock in our predictions for every single game. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's get into it. And Dan, Week 2, I think, as I just mentioned in the intro there, that there's a couple of teams here that came out of Week 1, 0-1, that I don't think you and I expected to be 0-1, right?
Yeah, there were some surprises, and as big a surprise, I maybe think that people think Nazareth losing to IC is. I don't consider that too big of a surprise. I was more surprised by St. Lawrence losing to King at home, and don't know what that means for either team. I feel like I've said that King was pointing to this year, but they're still pretty young when looking at them because they beat St. Lawrence. I went and looked at kind of their personnel and some of the other things, and they're still a pretty young team. They still play a lot of young people, but obviously pretty good. So yeah, I mean, the Mount Carmel loss was significant because it was by so much, and they didn't look great. And I don't know if I didn't see enough of the Brother Rice game to really think about that, but Lincoln Way East is a powerhouse in their own right. So they vaulted to number one, so it's there's some surprises, but then some, if you look a little deeper beyond what everyone thinks about public versus private, it makes a little sense.
Yeah, it does. And the couple surprises, obviously, but both of the big surprises with Mount Carmel, although going up against East St. Louis is a coin toss for sure.
Right.
Brother Rice losing to Lincoln Way East, another coin toss. Right, yep. When you really think about it, as far as how good the program, Lincoln Way East. But both Mount Carmel and Brother Rice were leading, right, going into the fourth quarter. Both of the teams were up. And what, to me, which was more concerning or more surprising maybe, is the mistakes that Mount Carmel and Brother Rice made, whether it was on offense or defense, which kept East St. Louis in the game, and Brother Rice and Lincoln Way East kept Lincoln Way East in the game, because I feel like both teams had a real good chance to win, but there were kind of some breakdowns at the end there.
Yeah, whether it was turnovers or defensive breakdowns or missed assignments or penalties, all those things are a factor, and so when we talk about teams looking buttoned up Week 1 like Loyola did, then it kind of makes sense. So we'll see. The old adage, right, that you improve the most between Week 1 and Week 2. It's been said forever, a million times. So we'll see, because at least in the case of Mount Carmel, not an easy opponent, not easy at all. I mean, I think they're dogs going into this weekend.
Yeah, probably. All right, so let's get into this, Dan, and we'll start with the Blue Division again this week, but we'll start with Brother Rice and Woodlawn, and this is an interesting matchup. Two teams coming out of Week 1 with very different emotions, right? Brother Rice lost to Lincoln Way East last week, 22-21. Lincoln Way East scored the final 9 points, as I just mentioned, in the fourth quarter. They were late down in the game, but they came back against a really good Brother Rice defense. And I think, and I mentioned this in our recap episode, was that maybe one of the biggest developments for Brother Rice was their debut of their freshman quarterback, Sam Holcomb. Now, we had talked about he rotated in with Rocco Galasso, who also had a good game as well from a statistics standpoint. But when Sam Holcomb was in there, he was responsible, or at least in there, for their 3 touchdowns, right? So what do you think that means for this week? Do you think he gets more time? Do you think they still kind of split things between him and Galasso? Or do you think they try and work Holcomb in a little bit more now?
I didn't realize just not how good he was. I knew he was going to be good, but just how many accolades he had, the offers he's got on the table already as far as for college football. It's crazy to think about how good he is. And I do think they probably split time again, but I would like to see Brother Rice run the football a little more and control the game. I think that's something that they did, was kind of their formula last year. But Sam Holcomb was in there and responsible for all 22 or 21, however many points they scored. I think he had a hand in all of it. So that's hard to ignore.
Right.
Galasso had 2 turnovers, but like you said, did not play poorly at all. So I still think they're going to split time. I'd like to see them get their running game lathered up and have them control the clock. I think that's possible or likely this weekend. Woodlawn is a charter school, Joe, on the south side that surprisingly finished 9-0 last year, but they don't qualify for the playoffs out of the Chicago Public League. So only some teams in some divisions qualify. They were not in one of those divisions, but I think you said they've won 10 in a row, and there's not a ton of information out there on them, and they were somewhat late add to the schedule. I think Brother Rice takes care of business in a big way this week, regardless of how they split and divide quarterback time.
Yeah, I think reading about and researching Woodlawn, they definitely like to rely on the running game. And what that does is play right into Brother Rice's strength, right, on defense, their defensive line as well. So that's going to be really tough for Woodlawn going up against them. I would like to see that Rice can establish more of a balanced offense this week. Like you just mentioned, I'd love to see him run the ball a little bit more, take a little bit pressure off of their quarterbacks, whoever that might be. And I really do think that Brother Rice kind of puts in a complete or more complete performance this week and takes care of Woodlawn. So I'm picking Brother Rice to win this game, Dan.
Yeah, Joe, they should. We have to say it straight up. They should dominate. If they don't dominate, then we've got more to talk about. So really, they should dominate in this game this weekend.
Yeah. All right. The next game here is Marist and King. And King, as we just mentioned in the opening, Dan, first of all, I give them kudos for their scheduling. Right. Their first 2 games of the year, King schedules 2 Chicago Catholic League teams. So kudos to them for that, but they are not a program to be overlooked at all. They beat St. Laurence last week. I think most people would probably call that an upset. I don't know. Do you think that was an upset last week? King knocking off St. Lawrence, Dan?
Yeah, I mean they're on the road as well. Week 1, you'd think St. Lawrence is as fired up as they're ever going to be, but King is trying to be giant killers. And like you said, kudos to them for their schedule. And now, Joe, whereas maybe we thought this game looked one way in the preseason, becomes kind of a good barometer game for both programs. King has a really good group that they think can win in the CCL, and they when you get a little confidence behind some talent, that goes a long way. Marist, I think, is in a really good situation with the breakout performance of Jake Fleming and Connor Fleming. They looked like a different team in week 1, but King has a ton of returning starters. I counted 17 returning starters.
Yeah.
Doing a little research. So that's pretty powerful, along with the belief that they can win on the road in the against the CCL team. So I'm not ready to say they can beat a blue division team from the CCL, but I think I would have said the same thing last week about them in St. Lawrence. But all that said, I'm still picking Marist.
Yeah, I think King went to the Class 5A. I think they're 5A quarterfinals last season, and they lost to St. Francis. So they lost to a Chicago Catholic League team. But one of the things, as you mentioned, Dan, is the number of returning starters that they have from a team that made it to the quarterfinals last year. I think that that's big. But I did watch the Marist game last week against Simeon, and Marist looks like the team that they usually are, and physical, big up front. They like to dominate on the line of scrimmage, like to run the ball, the very balanced approach, running and throwing. And I think they're going to stick to that formula this week. And I think they're going to be a little bit too much for King to handle. And I think Marist is probably going to limit King's possessions over the course of the game. So I'm picking Marist as well in this game. And I think we're going to see further emergence of Jake and Connor Fleming at the quarterback and wide receiver position for Marist, and expect Connor Hunt to have another good game too at the running back for Marist. So, I'm picking Marist by at least a couple of touchdowns, Dan.
Wow, that's big and bold, Joe. So, and you mentioned Connor Hunt and how it's. I think we talked about in our power rankings, which are available on our Substack page. You can go look at those. But
right.
We did running back power rankings this week, and we're going to try and add positions each week as the season goes on, maybe more than one in a week. So, but I think their passing game makes Connor Hunt a lot more effective. So that is, I think that's a big thing for Marist. And I'm not ready to say a couple touchdowns, but I do think they win.
Okay. All right, good. So the next game is Loyola at Cathedral, who is in Indianapolis team. Loyola, Dan, was one of the teams that you and I were very impressed with last week, not just from a talent standpoint and how they took care of business against Warren, shutting them out, also scoring 31 points, but the difference that we saw in some of the games and some of the teams as far as the preparation for Loyola, for me, it was very evident watching them play. And they looked like a well-oiled machine already in game one. And now they go to take on a team in Indianapolis in Cathedral who has a really good reputation, really good team. And I think this is going to be a really good game, but we'll see. What are you seeing in this game, Dan?
Yeah, two traditional powerhouse programs facing off. Cathedral is always a top team in Indiana. They have a lot of new faces this year, and they lost to another Indianapolis powerhouse in Ben Davis last week. They came back, they stormed back to tie the game and lost a heartbreaker late. They were down 17 at one point in the second half. So it's always interesting when teams like this meet, not unlike Mount Carmel and East St. Louis last week, but there's not a lot of, not that we use a transitive property, but there's not a lot of that to draw on. You don't have those like opponents. You don't have a frame of reference for this, but I think Loyola is way better than I thought. And they seem to come out of the gates very strong. And you mentioned preparation, but man, we saw it in performance. I think a lot of these teams prepare their butts off, but it's how they perform. And we saw a really tight, buttoned up Loyola team without the cleanup that we mentioned in several games last week. Cathedral wants to run the ball. They've got a stud in Xavier Dangerfield and some returners on the offensive line. Their defense is really young, but talented, and will present a challenge for Loyola. But I think this will be a close game, Joe, at Cathedral. But I do think Loyola edges them out for a victory.
Yeah, I think so too, Dan. I'm with you on that. I think Cathedral's strength is their running game. Warren last week against Loyola, if we were to say what their strength was their running game, and Loyola shut them down, complete shutout of Warren. And I think the same thing is kind of going to happen here. Now, obviously, the running back for Cathedral, I think he's a 4-star. Right. So he's a really talented running back, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to contain than maybe last week, the running back from Warren. But I like the way Loyola looked last week on defense and what they did. I liked what they did on offense as well, combining the running game with their two running backs, Melo Maldonado, and I can't think of the other name right now, Jaden Garrett.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good pull.
And I think that two-headed monster there, running back, is going to make a difference as well this week. So I am picking Loyola to win this game too. And the next one, Dan, is Mount Carmel at St. Joseph Regional. And I'm going to let you take this one because I had a really tough time with this one, Dan. And one of the reasons is, You mentioned we got our power rankings out there, not only for teams after week 1, but we've also got our running back power rankings out there. And it was so hard for me to drop Mount Carmel. I had them number 1 in my preseason power ranking, which probably a lot of people did. But I had to drop them down several notches just because of the loss last week. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they are able to do this week against a really talented and nationally ranked, I think 26th in the country, St. Joseph Regional. What do you think?
Yeah, another week, another clash of the Titans for Mount Carmel. Obviously a different opponent, but one that's loaded with talent and is a returning state champion. Joe, their kind of 4-star players are on the defensive side of the ball. They've got linebacker Taj Gray as their headliner, and they have a ton back on defense. They've also got a Washington commit in defensive end, Chaz Gray. So Mount Carmel has to be cleaner this week. And I'm not going to blame the officials. I just think this is going to be a better officiated game overall. So hopefully it looks a little better as well. We use the term cleaned up a lot when we talked about this game, and that game felt so disjointed. I don't know that this is a great matchup for Mount Carmel, which is crazy to say, as St. Joseph's strength is their defense and especially their back 7. And I hate to say it, but if I'm looking at this objectively, I think I see Mount Carmel being 0-2 after this weekend, and I'm picking St. Joe's.
Wow, who would have thought that, Dan, before the start of the season? I know we're right here at the beginning of the season, but to say that Mount Carmel might start out 0-2, people would have been knocking down our doors, right? Yeah. But one of the things that I don't know what the status of Ryder Starks is, and last week, when he got hurt, Brady Cloherty came in and he played well. The only thing is turnovers, 2 interceptions, right? And we know when you're playing teams of a certain level, even all levels, right? Turnovers can just be a killer for you, but especially a killer in games where you're playing teams that are nationally ranked or very, very equal to you as far as talent and that. And I'm concerned about that again this week. And the other thing about Mount Carmel, Dan, is I know Nathan Samuel, the running back, had 88 yards last week, which is a decent game, right? But I think we were expecting more from him. I heard nothing about Quentin Burrell from last week's game. It was all Marshawn Thornton, and he had an outstanding game. I still have so many questions about Mount Carmel, and I'm not sure how this is going to be. What I do know is that their practices this week, how difficult do you think those were, Dan?
They were no fun. I'm sure they were no fun at all. Because no one likes to lose. Coach Lynch said it right after the game. We hate how this feeling is. They don't want to have it again. Internally, we won't give them the BATW label here, but internally, that's how they're playing it. Like their backs are against the wall. So
I'm sure.
So I'm sure it was really a not fun week at Mount Carmel for practice, and hopefully we see a different result, Joe. And the fact that it's their second game and St. Joe's first game, I think might be a big deal as well.
I think it might be too. And I think the quote from Coach Lynch was, "We were lazy and undisciplined." And when I read that, I thought, oh my God, this week of practice must have been a killer for them. And I think it is going to make a difference that Mount Carmel's got a game under their belts, and they've got a chip on their shoulder now for sure. And the other thing that I think makes a difference for me in this game is the Green Knights, who are the St. Joseph Regional, they're playing with a new quarterback. I mean, their quarterback last year was a stud, and they've got a couple of new offensive skill players. I know they just reload based on the program they are, but I think Mount Carmel gets back on track here, Dan, and I think they come out with a win against St. Joseph Regional. So we're going to differ on this pick.
Yeah. The Prognosticus, he leaned on me a little bit on this one. He was pushing, and so I kind of went with his gut feel as well as mine. So it's good that we differ. I think that's good and healthy for the podcast.
Yes, I think so too, and I'm sure people will weigh in on that, Dan. But let's move on to the next division and the games within that, and that's the Purple Division, Dan. And the first game here that I'd like to talk about is Marmion versus Lincoln Park. So I think this matchup gives Marmion a good opportunity to kind of recover from what I think was a really frustrating game for Marmion, losing by 2 points to Racine Lutheran. I feel like Marmion, they were really good from the 10-yard line to the 10-yard line and had some trouble getting the ball in the end zone. I mean, we know Henry Miller had an outstanding game. Anytime your running back rushes for over 200 yards, I feel like you should score more than 21 points, right? That's just the way it is. And he was a standout. And I know they lost their quarterback. They had a sophomore quarterback who was starting for them, and they lost him before the game, before the first game. And a player that you and I like a lot, Colin McHenry, who was a big contributor last year. So this year, he had to be stuck at quarterback, right? And he didn't have much time to prepare either before their first game. So I think another week to prepare for Marmion against a Lincoln Park team that did have an impressive 28-0 victory over North Lawndale in week 1. But I think this is a step up for them in competition. It's at Marmion, and I think Marmion gets by them this week. I do think it may be as close as the game was last week, but I do think Marmion ends up pulling this out and gets a win over Lincoln Park.
Yeah, Joe, if they can get Henry Miller and Colin McHenry, they on the same page, so that I think that they're at a point now, if McHenry is going to be the quarterback, we know he's more athlete than quarterback, really commit to the run. You can be really dangerous running zone read if the defense doesn't know who's carrying the football. And Colin McHenry is as capable of a runner as anybody. And I think they get in the victory column this week after a really tough loss against Racine Lutheran. Lincoln Park defeated North Lawndale 28-0. And last year, Marmion beat North Lawndale 55-3. So I think it's a get right week for Marmion this week. And I think they have to really lean into that ground game, limit the turnovers. Don't put Colin McHenry, if he indeed is playing quarterback again, in a position to where it's really difficult. Hopefully they get their starter back. I don't know how serious the injury, but limit turnovers. They can control the clock, and they should be in good shape, Joe. I'm picking Marmion in this game as well.
Okay. All right. The next game here is St. Patrick and St. Viator, Dan, and two very different outcomes in week 1 for these two teams. St. Patrick with a big win, 54-27 over Rolling Meadows, while St. Viator, they lost in a big way, 51-0 to St. Ignatius. And I think these are two teams meeting at a time as far as in their progression as a program that is really going to hurt St. Viator. I think St. Viator is still searching for stuff here on offense and on defense. And St. Patrick seems to be like they are shifting into the next gear after a successful season last year. They've developed a really good, balanced offense, right? With Jaden Miranda last week, 170 yards and 3 touchdowns in his first varsity game. So I think they're going to rely on him big, but they also have a good passing game to complement their running game. You know, they've got Gavin Gardner at quarterback. He threw for 276 yards in week 1, 3 touchdowns, averaged 12.5 yards per attempt. His primary target was wide receiver A.J. Henning. So I think St. Patrick is obviously trending up. I think St. Viator is still trying to find out what they've got and how they're going to use the talent that they have to be productive as a team this year. But I think St. Patrick is ready to go and ready to move, and St. Viator is not quite there. So I'm picking St. Patrick in this game.
Yeah, Joe, St. Pat's had one of the more undercovered, underrated blowout victories that I've seen in a while over Rolling Meadows in week 1. It featured Jaden Miranda running behind a really big and physical offensive line. Rocco Mertens and A.J. Henning, as you mentioned, emerging in a big way and giving Gavin Gardner another really underrated performer from week 1. So they give him some real weapons to have. St. Viator is definitely BATW. and has to get something positive out of this week. I thought they'd be further along in their second year under Coach Gold, but I'm not sure they have the size. Not a lot of people are going to be able to match up to St. Pat's size on the offensive line, but they have the size or the experience to compete with Pat's at this time. We don't know, but they've got to find something positive. You don't want to lose your players after a second bad victory or bad loss. So they need to really compete this week, Joe. Really compete and find some, even if it's not in a victory, find something good that comes out of it. But they're in a bad way because while St. Pat's does it a different way than St. Ignatius, it's still a power running game, big strong backs, and complemented by awesome passing game as well. So I'm picking St. Pat's in this one. They host St. Viator, so it's I'm going to go with Pat's.
Okay, all right. Next game here in the Purple Division is Bennett and Glenbard North, Dan, and we were excited as Bennett alums to see the progress that Bennett made and came out in week 1 and beat the reigning 1A state champs and Lena Winslow. And I think from watching the game last week from Bennett that one of the things that kind of stood out to me was, first of all, their speed on team. They've got some players in some key positions that are important, and they've got a lot of team speed. I also liked how aggressive they were. I mean, they on both sides of the ball and on defense primarily, watching them kind of fly around the field and make big plays when they needed to. I really felt like that was a big step up for Bennett this year, and I was really encouraged to see that in week 1 from them. What do you see in week 2 from them at Glenbard North?
Yeah, Joe, it's two teams coming off really good wins. So Glenbard North defeats Brookfield East out of Wisconsin, and as you mentioned, Bennett beats the defending state champ in 1A Lena Winslow. Bennett defensively will face a different animal this week. Glenbard North, historically, I think the past 2 times they've played, recent history has pushed them around a little bit, and they've got the personnel to do it again. Big back with Angelo Gatsis and a big fullback and Azak Havorchik. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Both of these guys are two-way studs. They've got a big O-line and a power running game against Bennett's young defense. They're led by Dean Mia. Bennett is at linebacker, who's a big guy and a proven player, all conference in the CCL last year. If Bennett can find a way to control the tempo of this game and also find a way to get and keep Hawk Lawler involved, because Joe, I don't know if you saw the same thing I did on film, but it's like when he has the ball in his hands, he's a guy that makes you go, whoa. And
yeah,
I think
he's a difference maker for sure.
Yeah. He's a difference maker, but I think just based on this matchup and the size disparity that I think you're going to see from Glenbard North, both up front and even these big skill guys, I'm going to take Glenbard North.
Yeah, I thought about this and I thought Glenbard North is going to try and pound the ball. I think with Angelo Gatsis and his brother, who was the running back last year, I think rushed for over 200 yards against Bennett last year. And it's not to say that I don't think Bennett has some people who can match up on defense with Glenbard North's running game, but like you mentioned, I don't think they have the size to compete like on the defensive line. They've got Dean Mia, who I love at linebacker, and unless he makes 25 tackles, it's going to be a tough day for them, I think, on defense and really trying to stop Glenbard North's running game. So I'm going to pick Glenbard North as well, Dan. I do think this game is going to be closer than it was last year. I think the score last year was Glenbard North 41-15 over Bennett. I don't think it's going to be like that this year, but I do think Glenbard North probably has a little bit too much size up front for Bennett to be able to compete with that at this point. So I'm picking Glenbard North.
Yeah, once again, will be persona non grata.
Once again, we are not invited back on campus.
Right.
Yeah. So Notre Dame at Morgan Park, Dan. Notre Dame with a nice win last week against Westinghouse, 50-6. definitely a step up in competition this week for Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's a step up in class, Joe. Notre Dame makes its second week in a row against the Chicago public school, and Morgan Park means business. And they had a tough loss to Downers Grove North, a very good team, have had a great couple of years, and there was no moral victory to be found at Morgan Park. They are upset. They are going to come. They're going to host Notre Dame and with a chip on their shoulder because of people like us that highlight the CCL and think we overlook them. But I'm not overlooking them. And I think Morgan Park versus Notre Dame is one of the best matchups of the weekend. It's a barometer game for Notre Dame. And I think it's a battle of two teams on the rise. I think at this point in time, I think I'm going to give Morgan Park the edge, but I think it's a close edge. And I think it's a really close game that could help Notre Dame kind of establish credibility, even in a close loss. I know they don't want to hear that, and coaches would never say that to their players, but I think Morgan Park's really good, and I think they're just a little bit too much for Notre Dame at this time.
Yeah, I think Morgan Park is really good too. And when I saw the score against Downers Grove North, who we know is a perennial contender, right? State contender every year, only being 17-12, I thought, whoa, okay. But when I look a little bit deeper, I really liked what Notre Dame did in week one, even though it was against Westinghouse. But I felt like they're really balanced. They've got Eric Cooper threw 2 touchdown passes, one to Christopher Love, another to Peter Pangiotopoulos. And Christopher Love also rushed for, I don't know, I think it was 190 yards or something like that. But then when I also look at who they've got up front, Dan, Notre Dame, they've got some college prospects up front on their offensive line in Ray Hoofkin, and Gavin Ninny is another player, and Giovanni Branchima, who I love that name, by the way.
Great name.
And it is a great name, yeah. And I think Notre Dame has gotten a shot of confidence after week one, even though it was against Westinghouse. I know I keep saying that. But I'm going to pick Notre Dame to continue rolling here. And I'm going to pick them over Downers Grove North, which I think might probably be an upset if you're looking at other prognosticators across the state would probably be picking Downers Grove North here. But I'm going to go with Notre Dame and pick them to win this game.
Yeah. So I don't know if those other prognosticators have mythical creatures that help them pick, but
I don't think so.
I think that gives us the edge. Definitely gives us the edge. So I hope it's true, Joe.
It gives me the edge.
Yeah. I hope it comes true. I love that pick. I'd love to see Notre Dame continue to rise, and I'll be following this one because I'm really interested.
Yeah. All right, so we move on to the green, Dan, and St. Rita at Glenbard West, and maybe one of the more evenly matched games on the week 2 schedule, and it features 2 highly ranked Class 7A programs. Glenbard West gets a win in their first game. They beat Lockport, who's always a tough team. St. Rita lost to Providence in week 1, but it did come down to the fourth quarter at the end of the game. I think St. Rita was working out some kinks in game 1. That's the way I kind of felt in watching some of this. But I think they started to do that towards the end of the game. And I think that was evident in the second half that they were down pretty big in the first half and then came back in the second half against Providence. But I think Glenbard West, we know what kind of program they are. They're tough. They're big. They like to run the ball. They've got a quarterback in A.J. Rayford. I think he got his first start this past week, although we know he transferred there from Providence a year ago, or I think it was a year ago. And I think they're trying to be a little bit more balanced on offense because he did put up some stats in the first game. He threw for 122 yards in that start. They've got a really good wide receiver going to Northwestern. Go Cats, right?
Cats.
Brady Johnson. Yep. And I think Glenbard West might be a little bit too much for St. Rita in this game, Dan, based on their physical running game and also their ability to kind of strike when they need to from the passing game too. with AJ Rayford and their wide receiver. So I think St. Rita is going to look better this week, but I also think they're going up against an opponent that's going to be really tough for them. And I'm going to pick Glenbard West over St. Rita, Dan.
Yeah, Joe, the another marquee matchup for St. Rita. I mean, I think I can officially say St. Rita has the hardest schedule in the CCL. You mentioned Brady Johnson,
yes.
Go Cats. I played with his father at Northwestern, so we go back a long way. I'm really happy for Brady and for Rob. He's a stud on both sides of the ball, and he's a big time impact player. He's probably going to be the best player on the field this weekend, and he's an underrated guy. But St. Rita has John Fennell, who really impressed me last week. He's got really good field presence.
He did.
And he's a playmaker with both his arm and his legs. Yeah, Glenbard West is going to try and dominate with the run, which kind of I think plays into the hands of St. Rita. They had that kind of prep week against Providence, who also tries to run the ball. So a little bit different styles between West and Providence, but Joe, this is one of those. Glenbard West doesn't have lights, so they play all their games on Saturday afternoon, which I always think is weird for CCL teams. It's kind of a strange thing to get used to. It's one of those little things that you don't think matters, but I think it does. I knew as a coach it kind of felt different, but I think Glenbard West is probably prepped to be one of the best teams in their class this year, and so I'm going to pick Glenbard West this week, Joe, in a close game. Another tough loss for St. Rita, which I'm worried we may say more than a couple times this year.
Yeah. Okay. What about Nazareth versus York, Dan? This game Friday. This is a Friday game. Nazareth 0-1, lost to IC in week 1. York won. They beat Glenbard South. What are you thinking? What are you seeing regarding this game?
Yeah, Joe, I'm still a little shocked. Not that IC won, but just how dominant they were and they looked. And I'm still kind of waiting for that awesome Nazareth defense which is stacked with players. I do think that they're fighting some injuries, so not quite sure what those were, but I do think they have some guys banged up. But this has all the makings of a defensive game. York is led by their defense and Purdue commit defensive lineman Owen Roberts. They have a lot of guys back from a playoff team, and they're just consistently now one of the best teams in the area for the past several years. Yeah, it sounds like the exact same thing I would say about a typical Nazareth team, but we'll see if Naz is another one. I'd like to see them, even though J.J. Chapman played really well in his first game for Nazareth, I'd love to see them get the ground game going. And I think that's an important thing for Naz, But Joe, can we say Nazareth is BATW? Because I think it's early, but it's kind of shocking to say, and another really tough opponent, marquee game in the CCL, but I do think Naz finds a way to bounce back, and I think they win a hard fought game against a really good opponent. So I'm picking Naz.
Yeah, I think I would say we could say BATW for Naz, but then what pops into my head is a couple years ago when they had 4 wins and got into the playoffs and won the state championship, right? So I think from a standpoint of Naz, on offense especially, I feel like they had to replace a lot. And they're trying to rely on Chapman, who had a good debut. The only problem was some of the turnovers, right?
Yeah.
Threw a couple of interceptions, I think. I think they get that cleaned up. This was another tough week of practice, I think, for Naz this week. But I'm interested to see if they can get their running game going. Now, I saw last week they mentioned Dylan Wellner, right? And Jack Parisi, I think, was the other running back that scored a touchdown for them. What I didn't see was Charles Calhoun, Dan. I'm not sure what his status is, right? I think he was responsible for close to 1,400 yards rushing last year or something like that. So I'm not sure where he is and what he's doing, if he's hurt or not, if he's injured. But I do think Naz has the ability to come back this week after that first game and look a lot better on offense than maybe they did last week, and look a lot better on defense because they're gonna have to against the York team that does like to run the ball. So it's going to be a physical game. And I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm going to pick Naz as well to kind of get back on track here and get the win over York.
Yeah, Joan, do we know if Charles Calhoun is still at Nazareth? I feel like we've been burned a couple of times knowing for sure and talking about folks, but I know that it's not necessarily a highlighted thing like it is in college yet. Probably will be. So we only know about a few.
Talked about in all the preview stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was talked about in all the different preview stuff. So it's interesting to see that we haven't seen his name mentioned at all yet. But you mentioned they have some injuries, so maybe he's one of them. But we'll see as the season goes on. We'll keep people updated. And our next game, Dan, is Montini and Sandburg. This is a substantial kind of step up in competition for Montini, which I think is good. And one of the more interesting week 2 games on the schedule. Both of these teams dominated their week 1 opponents. Montini defeated Hoopston area 48-0. Sandburg defeated Riverside Brookfield 28-6. Montini extended its winning streak to 25 games in a row. And I know Izzy Abrams says he wants to go out undefeated in his starts. And they picked up right where they needed to. They need to win a game against a lesser opponent, and they did it. They didn't need too much production from Izzy, although in really one half, it gave him 192 yards and 3 touchdowns, right? So Izzy is his same old self. But I think that Sandburg, they're going to try and run the ball against Montini. And I'm interested to see how Montini does, how their defense is this year. We know, even though their offense has been outstanding, we know their defense over the last couple of years has been outstanding and really kind of the heartbeat of their team, in my opinion. I'm interested to see how they do against Sandburg, who likes to run the ball, likes to try and be physical right up front on the line. I know Montini has some players to combat that on the defense, but I think this is going to be a physical game. I think it's going to be a different game than Montini had in week 1. But I also think Sandburg will not have seen a team this explosive like Montini with this many weapons on offense, even though they've got a good defense. So I'm going to pick Montini in this game, Dan, and I'm actually going to pick them by a couple of touchdowns.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, they better be ready to crank it up, Joe, because Sandburg's the real deal. Beating a talented RB team pretty easy. RB has a lot to offer with Lucas Mankiewicz, an NIU commit, and they've got Quinn Durkin, who's going to Army, lineman Cade Kohler, who's going to play college football. But Montini, though, is one of the top teams in the CCL and in the state, regardless of size. And they don't really have to take a backseat to anyone as far as talent's concerned. And you talked about Izzy Abrams being really efficient and explosive in one half of football. They're going to need that again, and they need the defense to step up. Guys like Johnny Louise, Ben Evenson, former Dog. So they are certainly equipped, and they are probably, like you said, maybe a touchdown or 10-point favorites in this game, I would think. But if I'm Sandburg, I am really cranked up. I'm talking about this game all week at school. I'm getting the students fired up. I am bringing it because I think they probably feel like they've got a chance for a big upset. Montini coming off an emotional day or evening, dedicating the field to Coach Andriano. So, but I still don't think it's enough because I think Montini is just one of the top teams in the state. So I'm picking Montini as well. I'm not confident enough to say a couple touchdowns, but I am picking Montini.
All right. So we're in sync on that game as well, Dan. And this next game, I'm not sure if this is taking place or not, honestly. St. Francis and Clemente. Yeah. And I don't know. The game is still out there on everybody's schedules, including the IHSA. But Clemente did forfeit their first game of the year. So I'm not sure if this game will be played. If it is, I think St. Francis is probably going to win this game and win it pretty easily, Dan. They had a tough game last week against New Palestine. They didn't necessarily dominate in the stats, but they really kind of outgained yardage-wise against New Palestine, a really good team, a state champ from Indiana last week. And he had a little bit too much in the way of some breakdowns, and they gave up some big plays on defense. So I'm a little concerned about St. Francis's defense, but I'm not all that concerned about their offense. I think Tivius Caldwell, who ran for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game against New Palestine, I think he's going to be featured more in this game as well. And if it gets played, and I think St. Francis comes out of this with a big win if they do end up playing this game.
Yeah, Joe. Well, the biggest news that came out of that week one was that Jaden Wilson was hurt and missed a significant portion of that game. If the game doesn't get played, is it a blessing in disguise because he needs another week? Maybe. I didn't hear what the injury was, but it could be something that another week might do him well. And I think that yeah, if it does get played, St. Francis wins this game going away. You know, it's a team that's having trouble finding players. So it's St. Francis in a big way.
Yeah, one of the things I was a little bit concerned about in regards to the quarterback position and the passing game for St. Francis, Dan, just looking at what Jaden Wilson did before he got hurt, and then I think Alex Taylor came in for him. They did complete between the two of 18. They were 18 of 33, which isn't terrible, but their average yards per pass was under 10. It was closer to around 8, right? So what we know about St. Francis previous to this is they were pretty explosive down the field, right, when they needed to be with their weapons. So maybe they're still working into that as an offense, but from a standpoint of being able to get that explosive play down the field plays for some significant yardage in the passing game, they didn't necessarily show that in their first game. So that'll be something I think we got to keep our eye on going forward with St. Francis.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the game gets played, if Jaden Wilson plays and how they do it. I know he adds a lot to their offense, not only with his arm, but with his legs. So kind of does change things when you lose something, which is why we saw Tivius Caldwell probably have the week he had. So either way, I think we have another week that we don't necessarily have to worry about St. Francis. They should win this one going.
All right. And the next game we've got, Dan, is De La Salle and Plainfield East. And De La Salle lost last week to Revis 53-34. We were encouraged by them putting up 34 points. Plainfield East beat Argo 49-0. And Plainfield East, even though Argo is not the best program in the world either, but Plainfield East was pretty dominant on both sides of the ball, as you could tell by the score. But what are you thinking here as far as De La Salle is concerned? And they're playing a good team in Plainfield East, and it is at home for De La Salle, so I think that helps a little bit. But I think it's probably a step up in competition from Revis, so it'll be interesting to see if the progress that we saw last week at De La Salle, especially on offense, continues against Plainfield East. We know they were a little challenged on defense against Revis, but what I would like to see is some progress from De La Salle on offense and defense, and maybe keep this game a little bit closer. But like I said, I think they're stepping up in competition. And I don't think De La Salle is going to be able to come out with a win against Plainfield East. One of the things that I like, Dan, and we didn't see this or mention this in our recap episode, but there is a player on De La Salle. We've mentioned some of the players on defense for them, but they had Cameron Mosley, who's a running back. He had 9 carries for 150 yards. He had a 95-yard touchdown run, a 32-yard touchdown run, and a 14-yard touchdown reception. So they may have found somebody here on offense that we weren't quite aware of that maybe they can build on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Cam Mosley, Joe, because he seems to be a guy that has an opportunity to perhaps get in the power rankings in subsequent weeks. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I think the game itself this week is a carbon copy of last week for De La Salle, and we will again see if see if they can step up a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. Plainfield East is a playoff team from last year. They've got a really strong running game, so very similar challenge for De La Salle this week as to last week. David Kroom for Plainfield East is back, and he's a focus for them this year. I'm worried that it might just be a very similar result to what we saw last week, because I'm worried that De La Salle is still trying to find it on the defensive side of the ball, and you really have to be able to stop the run in high school football, or especially against teams like Plainfield East that really want to run the ball. So I'm thinking it looks pretty similar to last week, and I'm picking Plainfield East in this one.
Yeah, and they want to run the ball, as you mentioned, and De La Salle struggled on defense, obviously, last week. And I was looking at the line for Plainfield East, and 6'5", 305, 6'1", 320, 6'3", 310, and 6'3", 265. So that's a big offensive line that De La Salle's defensive line has to go up against, and we'll see if they have a little bit more success against Plainfield East than maybe they did against Revis. But it's a tall order for them, I think, this week, and I agree it's going to look a lot like last week.
Yeah, that's a big offensive line. I love that you found that out, how big their starters are. That's a college size line. I don't know what the guy who weighs 265 is doing. He needs to get to go through the line twice, because he's fallen short. He's got about 30 to 40 pounds he's got to gain.
He's got to live at my house for about 3 weeks. I will put 15 to 20 pounds on him in a heartbeat.
Amen.
All right. The next game, Leo versus Eisenhower, Dan. And the interest in this game, obviously, Leo, they started out 1-0 and defeated Proviso East 46-6. And I think Eisenhower lost to Piatone 28-6. So what I'm kind of excited about here is to see if Leo can get a 2-0 start again against Eisenhower.
Yeah, it's what Leo needs to do, Joe. It's kind of the opposite. They need to get their running game going and establish a true running game that's effective and consistent throughout the game. Eisenhower gave up over 300 yards to Piatone, who's a running football team. And I would like to see Leo really try and push that running game this week and try and do something similar. It's a step up for Leo, but they've got a strong defense. I think we saw that in week 1, is that the strength of their team is defense. And I think that's a great thing, and it bodes well for their future this year. So I do expect them to win this game, Joe. I'm picking Leo. I think it's going to be them stepping up defensively and giving Eisenhower a lot of problems on the offensive side of the ball. So also excited to see Leo 2-0 would be a great thing for Leo, those guys that are still part of the program, and Coach Hopkins as well.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how their sophomore quarterback, Terrence Wilson, does in game 2 here against some additional competition, because I think last week he accounted for 5 touchdowns for Leo. He rushed for 3, he threw for 2, he had 92 passing yards and only 3 completions. So they don't throw the ball a lot, but he's an explosive player and is a real weapon on offense for Leo, and only a sophomore. So it'll be really interesting to see if he kind of keeps that up against Eisenhower and then through the rest of their games.
Yeah, that'll be a thing to watch, and something we'll have to see. Maybe he's the primary ball carrier. I didn't see their game, so they certainly could do kind of the zone read thing, or I don't know. So I don't know if it's designed run or if it's scramble back there. It sounds like it might be designed, that they don't necessarily want to throw the ball a lot if they don't have to. But if he's a primary ball carrier, they're in good shape, because he's explosive.
Yeah. All right. So we've got Marion at Morton, Dan, and not Morton in Berwyn, Cicero. It's the Morton High School in or near Peoria, the Potters of the Mid-Illini Conference.
Yes. Yeah.
The Potters. I do like that name. I haven't seen their logo, but I like the name. What do you think about this? So Marion Catholic, they started out 1-0. They beat Bloom 27-9. Morton lost their first game against a really good team in that area, Muhammad Seymour. They're good every year. But what are you seeing in this game? I feel like this is one of the harder ones to predict, actually.
Yeah, I think Morton was probably surprised last week after that loss to Muhammad Seymour. As good as Muhammad Seymour traditionally is, I think Morton kind of has this as a year for them. They see themselves as a title contender, and they have a lot of talent, the skill positions, a big Division I U of I offensive lineman. Last name is Pfeiffer. But Marian Catholic is scrappy, and they have some weapons, and they know how to use them. Joe, I watched some of the Marian Catholic highlights, and I know Drew Gore's wide receiver scored 2 touchdowns last week. If you check out his highlights, I love how he plays. If you're a corner and you have to play the run, and Drew Gores is assigned to blocking you, you better have your chin strap tightened up. He will block you and block you and block you until you are either down on the ground or off the field. And I love to see that from wide receivers. Antonio Banks kind of established himself as a running back for Marian Catholic, and he and Gores seem to be the players to watch. And while I think this is really close, Joe, I think Morton's pretty talented, needs this victory, and I think Morton pulls this out at home. So I'm picking Morton this week.
All right. Well, you mentioned one of the key players for Marion and Gores. The other one is Antonio Burton, their running back, who I think last week had 87 yards rushing, so quick. And I think they had over 150 yards total rushing. So I think with those 2 weapons on offense from Marion, I do think that Morton has got probably the size, and I would think Marion might be an underdog in this game, but I think Marion is going to continue to perform well here in week 2 against Morton, and I think they're going to continue just try to get the ball to Gores and Burton, and I think they're going to have a couple of big plays, big scoring plays. So I'm going to go with Marian Catholic over Morton, Dan, in this game.
Good pick. I'd love to see it. Yeah, gosh, I'm picking against the CCL up and down the line this week. I'm listening to myself and I'm like,
what is going on?
Now they're what is happening? Crazy. Yeah. So
what is happening?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
All right. Well, you still got time, Dan. We've got some more games to cover here. So, and this is Carmel and Lake Forest. And tell me, you're picking Lake Forest in this game.
I'm actually going to pick Carmel in this game, Joe. Yeah, I think they step up. I think Lake Forest might be a little down, but Carmel has a lot of weapons, and I think they're just scratching the surface. When we talk about a team that's figuring it out, I think Carmel fits that to a T. What they're doing on the offensive side of the ball, I'd like to see them play a little more stout defensively. But I do think that they pounded Lake Forest last year after losing to Lake Forest the year before. This is a great rivalry. I didn't do my map quest this year to tell you how far apart they are. You have to go back and listen to last year's episode to figure that out. But
all right.
But it's a great rivalry. It's got some impact in the area. And Joe, I think Carmel pulls it out this week against Lake Forest, the Scouts.
Yeah, and I've got a map quest or geography question for you a little bit later here, Dan. So I hope you're prepared.
Okay. Oh boy.
It's not about this game, but I think too that I think Carmel, their first game in a loss, I think they were still kind of figuring things out, right? And now that they've got a game under their belts, they see what they did well, what they need to improve on. I think they're probably going to do that this week. I think Reed Dangle to Kyron Hart was a pretty good combination last week. I do think on offense, they've got to get the running game involved a little bit more. They've got 2 really good running backs that we'd like to see get the ball a little bit more. And maybe they'll do that this week. I know they faced a really good quarterback last week in Hersey's Jake Naroth, and they're not going to face someone quite like that this week. So I think the game is going to go completely different. And I'm going to pick Carmel in this game.
All right. So we're 2 for 2, Joe. And I put Carmel as my note says BATW. So both these teams are 0-1, and it's kind of must win for Carmel. So yeah, they've got a BATW next to them.
All right. What about Providence and Kenwood, Dan? Where are you on this game? We know Providence is not BATW yet, or if they ever will be, but with their week 1 win over a good St. Rita team. So what are you looking at with this game?
Kenwood is coming off a loss to Palatine after winning the Chicago Public League last year. And if Kenwood can kick extra points, they win the game. They went for 3 2-point conversions, didn't convert any of them. So this is not a cakewalk for Providence, and they cannot overlook a good Kenwood team that can probably jump up and surprise them. But the B&B boys, Braden and Broden, I think they're too much to handle, and they are establishing themselves as one of the better, again, for the second year in a row, just one of the better running games in the in the state. And so yeah. I think Providence gets the W in this game. But I do think that if they have any sort of letdown at all, this could be a shocker that we're talking about next week. But I'm picking Providence.
Yeah, I don't think there's a letdown from Providence. I think they actually make progress, especially on offense. I know they're going to rely on Broden Mackert and Braden McKay, again, the running backs. One name we didn't see mentioned much at all after last week's game, Dan, was Don Vita, their quarterback, right?
Yeah.
I think they're going to start getting him more involved, maybe in the passing game a little bit more involved, be a little bit more balanced, even though I think they're really going to rely on their 2 running backs a lot and have probably one of the best, like you mentioned, rushing teams or rushing tandems in the state of Illinois. I don't think Kenwood is going to be able to handle the physicality of Providence, especially on their offensive and defensive lines. And I think Providence wins this game as well.
All right.
So now we move on to Fenwick and Oak Park River Forest. And this is one of my MapQuest geography questions for you, Dan. How far apart are Fenwick and Oak Park River Forest?
Wow. I have to guess this one. They are
if you were
right,
to guess.
They are right near one another. Joe, are we dating ourselves by referencing MapQuest? I think we are.
I don't know. Maps? Just say maps.
Maps, yes. I think they are. I think I know where these schools are, and it is really close. It's about, there's always a ton of traffic. So you've got to take that into account. Ton of traffic.
I
think they're less than 2 miles.
How long it takes to get between.
Yeah, 2 miles, less than 2 miles.
You're approximately right. They're roughly a mile apart. That's
1 mile apart. Yeah, I knew they were really close. God, I'm ashamed because that's normally my thing. So I've got to pick it up a notch, and
it is.
I think these are all awesome games. I love that these two teams play each other. OPRF has some weapons this year. I think they are a team on the rise. They've got weapons at quarterback and running back. Liam Smith is a veteran running back and linebacker who can. He's got the ability to control the game on either side of the ball. They have returners with all conference accolades as well as young players. So longtime vets. They defeated Rich Township 39-8, and it's going to be a pretty hostile environment. And this game's at OPRF, right?
The game is at Fenwick.
Oh, it is. Okay. All right.
I think.
Still a hostile environment, but maybe more for OPRF. But can Miles Hill repeat his performance from last week? Is he going to carry the load early on? And I thought it was funny. We didn't talk about Jake Thies, but he didn't have that dominant 200-yard rushing game, but the guy just fills his stat sheet every week by what he does and is such an impact player. He still was all over the field defensively, big plays offensively. Didn't get a ton of carries, but Miles Hill, I think, is that guy that we talked about before the season started. That is kind of the breakout star that Fenwick needs, in addition to Jake Thies. So Joe, I'm picking Fenwick in this one.
Yeah, and you're right. We didn't mention Jake Thies all that much after week 1, and not because he didn't make an impact on the game. He just didn't have the unbelievable stats, right? But he's all over the field on defense. I think he did have an interception in the game and also had receiving touchdown. So it's not like he didn't do anything. But I think we're going to see him a little bit more involved in the offense And maybe they're kind of rolling them out slowly here, Dan, as far as when they need them, if they need them, that kind of thing on offense. Because we know he's a difference maker all over the field, wherever you put him. So I do think that Fenwick kind of rolling out Miles Hill last week as their quarterback and then seeing the success he had in throwing the ball and running the offense. I think that gets better and better every week, especially with a young quarterback. And I think Fenwick comes away with a win here over Oak Park River Forest too.
Yeah, that's a good call.
And
Jake Thies, I think one thing, Joe, I think Jake Thies, I truly believe that they are slow playing him until they get to the playoffs when they really think they need to lean on him. I for some reason feel like that's a plan. I think that's something that Coach Battaglia would do, trying to think one step ahead. So sorry to interrupt you there. I know we've got one game left, right? We've got St. Ignatius hosting Hope Academy.
We've got St. Ignatius hosting Hope Academy. And tell me about this game, Dan.
So Hope Academy wins 30-20 in week 1 over Bulls Prep, but Reed Heights, they look to go to 2-0 after just demolishing St. Viator in week 1. This game is at Ignatius, and they look to be much improved. I like to talk about their offense all the time because it's so hard to prepare for. I was an offensive line guy and understand that when you face an offense like that, how difficult it can be week in and week out. Just to run the scout team to try and prep the defense that week is a huge challenge. But I'm excited to see if they can continue to perform like this defensively. I mean, we know St. Viator is still searching and has had its struggles, but a shutout at home for St. Viator was at home last week. A shutout like that is no small feat. And that was the big surprise I took away from this game. So I think once again, Hope Academy's a nice team, but I think we might be seeing the rise once again of St. Ignatius, and I'm going to pick St. Ignatius in this game.
Yeah, and I think Hope Academy beat St. Ignatius last year, right? Because I think they played them last year too, and St. Ignatius lost to them. But I might have to confirm that. But I thought I saw that. But this St. Ignatius team looks like something completely different, right? And we talked about how the end of last year, they really kind of came on and they picked up kind of right where they left off last year at the end of the season. And I think they had their starting offense out of the game against St. Viator right after the first half was over. And I thought, that's the Ignatius offense we kind of remember if you forget about last year. And I think they're poised to have a really good year. They've got key good players at the positions that you need them at: quarterback, running back, receiver, safety. They've got some good line players on the defensive line and offensive line as well. And yeah, I think Hope won their game last week, and it was a good win. They beat Bulls College Prep 30-20. But as we know, St. Ignatius is a much different team than Bulls College Prep. So I'm picking St. Ignatius to beat Chicago Hope Academy.
All right. We made it.
All right. So, well, we've got one more division.
We do?
We've got the white.
What was I thinking?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I don't know. That's fine. I thought you were talking about we've only got one more team in the orange division. But here,
Joe,
in the
you
white,
can handle the white division. So I'm gonna take the rest of the night off.
You're checking out? Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well, actually, I've been talking so long and so much, Dan, that I might need you to do the whole white division. No, actually, I think I'm okay. But St. Laurence at Prospect, I'll let you start with this one, Dan.
Yeah, St. Laurence they are definitely BATW. Now, I don't think that their schedule is as difficult as, like, say, a St. Rita's that's coming off a loss, but Joe, they really need this win, and it is. I'm in the position with St. Laurence in that I don't know what I don't know about them. I kind of expected something so different than what we got. I wasn't able to view a lot of the game. I just kind of saw some really short snippets, but I think it's it's really imperative that they come out and try and take care of business against Prospect. And I was pretty surprised last week's loss to King, but it doesn't get any easier. Prospect comes off a pretty easy win against Stevenson. Prospect has several players committed to play big-time football next year. Nate Cici at wide receiver and Jackson Ciccini, good name, and running back Matthew Donnelly, all are potential college players, and they seem like a pretty motivated group. So on the road, I think St. Laurence is in for another tough night. And Fortunately, I think it looks like they could lose another 1 or 2 point game. But I'm picking Prospect.
Yeah, I'm picking Prospect too, Dan, just based on when I looked at what St. Lawrence did on offense last week and really unable to kind of move the ball. I know Noah Taylor, who we saw, he was young last year and split some time at quarterback last year. And when he did come in, he was very effective. And he was not very effective last week against King. And I'm not sure if that's because they didn't really want to rely on him, or it was just part of the way the game went. But I think he only threw for 59 yards. Did have a touchdown, and he did throw one interception. But we've talked all along about how are they going to replace the production of Corey Less at running back. And I think they're relying on a junior, Kanan Morgan, who I think they want to kind of carry that workload, but he was unable to kind of get going either. I think King just kind of stacked the line and said, we're going to dare you to throw it and see if you can beat us that way. And St. Lawrence was unable to do that. So I think King probably showed other teams here what you might want to try against St. Lawrence right away and see how that does. And I know Sean Rice, linebacker for St. Lawrence, had a good game, had a lot of tackles last week, but they're going up against a really good running game in Prospect, and I think it's going to be another tough game for them as well, as you said. So I'm picking Prospect.
Okay, yeah. Well, I know we've got a few more games here, Joe, and we can move on. So I can take it as you kind of gather yourself. I know Joe's playing hurt tonight, everybody. He's got that early fall bug, but I'm going to go to Joliet Catholic hosting Sacred Heart Griffin. And when I watch Sacred Heart Griffin, they look like a CCL team. They can beat you in a lot of ways. They beat a really good Lincoln Way Central program last week. And I think that they've taken this challenge and they thought, we're going to schedule these teams early on. We want a flavor. You're making me cough of a really good public school from the suburbs, and then a really good team from the CCL. So they won that game, Joe, in kind of the closing seconds with one of the great catches you will see in the high school game from Demetrius Roberson from the quarterback Cam Brinkman. They've got a kid named Andrew Wolters who's kind of a do-it-all type player for SHG, playing on both sides of the ball. You can find comparisons to me between Sacred Heart Griffin and Fenwick. And Joliet Catholic is going to need a big performance in this game. Really, really, really have to control the football and use their physicality. That's the one thing they're going to have over just about everybody they play. They are big and strong, and regardless of where they're at from a talent perspective, numbers perspective, whatever, you always know they're going to be big and strong. I think it's a weekend that Joliet Catholic makes a statement, and I think they beat SHG in Joliet this weekend.
I do like that pick, Dan, a lot, because that's what I would like to see happen. I'd like to see Joliet Catholic kind of put it together. But one of the things that really concerned me last week was their offense. And I know Fenwick has a good defense, but only be able to put up 13 points and against Fenwick, and now going up against Sacred Heart Griffin, who won a game against Lincoln Way Central, I think in the last seconds of the game. They scored at the end to kind of steal a win from Lincoln Way Central. So, but I do think Sacred Heart Griffin probably has too much in the way of offense for Joliet Catholic to deal with. And even though I like Joliet Catholic's defense a lot, I'm just not sure about their offense and if they're going to be able to put up enough points this year against some of these tough teams in order to get the wins. So I'm going to pick Sacred Heart Griffin in this game, Dan.
Yeah, it's a good pick. I would, if I'm Joliet Catholic, I'd give them a heavy dose of Derek Pomato in the tailback position and just hammer them as much as I possibly can. Now, probably not great for Derek Pomato who plays on both sides of the ball, but it's a way that they could beat them. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking they control the ball this week and their physicality leads the way.
All right. So this next game, Dan, this is the next game I'm going to ask you about your geography and your expertise as far as how far apart schools are. So we've got DePaul Prep and Lane Tech playing this Friday. True Northside neighborhood matchup for sure. How far apart are DePaul Prep and Lane Tech, Dan?
0.3 of a mile.
Well, I calculated this in steps. So it's 1,100 steps.
Wow.
To get from DePaul Prep to Lane Tech. Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
They are, I mean, you can see them right from each other. They're separated by a sidewalk, I think, or something like that. So this is going to be a fun game. The other thing that I was just shocked about, Lane Tech has over 7,000 students in that school.
Remember when we saw it, Joe? We thought it looked.
Yes.
And I'm about to throw you under the bus. I was like, what did we say about it? But it wasn't what I said. It was what you said. You said it looked like an old scary prison from like an old movie.
Yes,
when we were there doing our dog of the week presentation. So yeah, but that doesn't matter.
Good thing nobody from Lane Tech listens to us. Yeah,
yeah. It's got character. It's got a ton of character and a lot of history. And does it really matter where this game is at? I just love this game. Friends become enemies. Yeah. Families don't speak to their neighbors. Cats and dogs living together. It's mass hysteria. You can literally throw the records out because this one might be a brawl. Does DePaul Prep have a letdown in them after a big upset win over Richards? I don't know. I think the running game is a great way to get a team out of any sort of lull. And who better than Tyson Hooks to get that done? I mean, Lane has a two-sport stud, Blake Perkins at quarterback. He's a big-time baseball player. And then they've got a junior wide receiver, Aiden Andrich, who's a big, tall guy. He runs good routes, catches the ball well. But I do think that DePaul has the upper hand in this. I'm gonna pick DePaul gets a 1-point victory in this game just because I think that would make for a better story. So I'm rooting for the narrative in this to live up to the closest of the schools in the rivalry.
Is it also going to come down to like the last second of the game?
That would be even better. Even better if it did.
All
yes. Right. And it happened in that north end zone. If I've got my directions right, that north end zone that kind of goes right towards, I think it's going toward Lane Tech.
Right towards Lane Tech.
Yes, where you can see it and you get all the players and with the scary penitentiary looking building in the back.
Yeah. Well, I think as you mentioned, Dan, it starts and ends with Tyson Hooks in this game for DePaul Prep. We saw what he could do last week in 190 yards rushing and several touchdowns. And I think they're going to lean on him big in this game too, obviously, as they should, right? I think he's going to be the biggest part of their offense. You'll probably see them trying to do a couple of things which might be a little bit different than just relying on Tyson Hooks. And I'm sure they've got the personnel and got the talent to do that. So again, I feel like DePaul Prep, considering what we thought about them through the summer and with the new coach and all the changes going on, I was a bit surprised about how well they played last week and how ready they looked out there on the field. And I think Coach Bizzieri has them going in the right direction and in the right direction quickly. So I think we're probably going to see them even progress even more over game 2 here against Lane. So I'm picking DePaul Prep to beat Lane Tech, Dan.
Okay. All right. Now we're down to one game left, right?
Now we're down. One game left. Yes. And this is IC at St. Mary's Southside in Missouri, right? Although the game's not in Missouri. I don't know. Did you see that? They are playing this game at Illinois Wesleyan.
Yeah, they're kind of splitting the difference, which is I think a good thing to do.
Yeah, I do. And It's good that it's at Illinois Wesleyan too, because the stands aren't going to be, the stands don't need to look filled unless you've got 5,000 people, which they'll probably have a lot of people there. The stands will be filled. That's one thing, by the way, I didn't like about Mount Carmel and East St. Louis that played at Illinois State last week. And I think that put a little bit of a damper on the game for me too. I mean, when you looked at the stands on both sides at Illinois State, they were empty. Yeah, there were people there. Both the teams travel pretty well, but if you've got 1,500, 2,000 people in a 25,000 seat stadium, it makes it look like a game on Monday afternoon, unfortunately. But
yeah, I didn't love that either. It contributed to it along with the officials. It just felt a little sleepy watching it from a viewer's perspective. So I get what you're saying, and this is a better venue for a high school game.
Yeah. It is. And tell me what you think about this game, Dan. I think, is this the third year in a row that IC has played St. Mary's?
Yeah,
and
I think
they started it.
They started it, Joe, with the idea because of when IC was looking for someone to play in a week.
Right.
So it was kind of a scramble. But Joe, what I think is if I were going on name value alone, the Southside Dragons would hands down be my favorite team in the CCL. Yeah. They sound like they're playing a Friday night softball game at Mount Greenwood Park at 111th and Wandale. And as it is, like I see, they are pointing to this year as a potential big year. They return Missouri commit Kingston Miles, so close also to Kingston Mines. And how is this team not from Chicago? It plays out kind of like a heavyweight fight with a new contender, Jacoby Baldwin, taking on the established champ in Kingston Miles. Excuse me. It's a fun matchup, and I like IC, but I hope they read 0 press clippings from this week and listened to nothing except this podcast. But I think we can look for IC to continue to get great, have a great balanced attack. Nate Lang, super efficient, really underrated. Grant Bowen doing some damage. Jacoby Baldwin got a lot of headlines this week, but he's kind of that gravy on top of a nice helping of mashed potatoes. And when you've got Nate Lang and Grant Bowen already there, you're in a really good spot. So my pick is for IC this week.
So you're sitting at the round table.
I am at the round table. I am there.
I think that's a good place to be this week in this game, because I'm picking IC too. Without Jacoby Baldwin, take him out of the picture, this game for me would have been a bit of a toss-up. But Jacoby Baldwin, the way he kind of exploded on the scene, the way I watched him run last week in game 1, I thought he's a difference maker all by himself, even though they've got several difference makers on this team, and Nate Lang and Grant Bowen and others, right? But Jacoby Baldwin, I think, just makes a complete difference in how this team looks, how the offense looks for IC. They had over 500 yards of offense last week, Dan, against Nazareth. 265 rushing, 257 passing. Just a complete kind of, not domination, but incomplete control of the game on offense against a really good Nazareth defense. So I give all the props to St. Mary's Southside and some of their top players, like you mentioned, Kingston Miles, 4-star running back, and he's really good, but I don't think they've got enough of those guys to compete with IC. And I think IC is going to win this game as well, Dan, and they beat St. Mary's Southside, the Dragons, who, by the way, I do love their logo. So they've got that going for them.
Yeah. And I've got to give a quick shout out to my buddy, good friend, St. Rita alum, Dan Laurence. He's the one that gave me the name of the park on the south side where they play softball, because this suburbanite doesn't know that type of thing. But I knew the Southside Dragons sound like a softball team, and so I had to ask him. I said, "Hey, I want to use this in the podcast. Give me an idea. Give me a park on the south side where people play softball." Shout out to Dan Lorenz. Thanks, Dan.
Shout out to Dan Lorenz. Thanks, Dan. We'll get more of his input as we go along throughout the year for sure, Dan.
Sounds good. He'll love it.
All right, so that's a wrap on this week's Prognosticus episode. Thank you for riding along with us through the entire Chicago Catholic League slate of games. Get out to the games this weekend if you can. Support the players and the teams. We'll be back the end of this weekend with our recap episode, and we'll see how our predictions held up. And we'll also break down a little bit of the next round of matchups. And please make sure you go out there wherever you're listening from, wherever you get your podcast from, and like, follow, subscribe to us, catch us on social media, comment. Also visit our Substack at thevarsityvoices.substack.com. We're out there all over. You can't miss us. Just put our name, The Varsity Voices, in the search, and you will get all sorts of results, right? For the Varsity Voices, I'm Joe Frevaletti, alongside Dan Frevaletti, and we will see you next time.